Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chatty Bumpkin. My name is Hannah, and I am here today, super excited, with an external guest. His name is Phil. He is actually the man behind the sound on all things Chatty Bumpkin. And yeah, I tell you what, I'm going to let him introduce himself. He's going to do a much nicer job of telling you who he is and what his background is. So, Phil, tell us about yourself.
Hi, well, my name's Phil Davis, and I am the founder and the only person in something called Write Inspired. I'm a teacher by profession, but started Write Inspired about 15 years ago, and now act in a consultancy role, sort of working in schools, predominantly primary, and Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, all over the UK and abroad. Try and promote my philosophy.
Oh, brilliant. Well, the reason I've asked you kind of on today, well, we were brainstorming great people, and Sam, who's our founder, and I know a good friend of yours, have recommended Phil because he is like, I want to say educational guru, but I don't know if that's the term you would use.
Thank you very much. Oh,
you're welcome. So yeah, let's tell me a bit more about your background, like sort of, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I became a teacher many moons ago, sort of by accident, really. I worked in a school for children with emotional and behavioural problems, and I worked in a particular way that was a little bit different, and the head at that school said I should become a teacher, so I did. And then I worked in school settings for about 15 years, did the whole senior management, all that kind of stuff. But eventually I was asked to speak at various conferences, do some teacher training and stuff like that. So I sort of cut out on my own, really. And now I sort of spend my time going around schools, predominantly working with children and being observed. That's the way I tend to work. So I show teachers and school leaders a different approach to teaching, predominantly writing, self-expression, creativity, that sort of thing. And as I say, I work with right from early years right up to year 6 predominantly. And that's basically it. And then I do that thing, and I do a lot of insets and courses and things like that as well. So I see a lot of schools. So I'm very privileged because I've seen the most exclusive private schools to special units to what are called PRUs, which are pupil referral units, which is for children who don't fit in at school so well, or they've been expelled or whatever. And I see a sort of unified response to the work I do. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
You said that you teach a different philosophy. I think that's the word you used. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, you asked me yesterday to talk about what I think is what are the issues in schools. So I think my key thing is that teaching has to be inspirational and passionate and rigorous and knowledgeable. And I fear what I see now is that there's such an obsession with assessing everything. It's almost as if it can't be measured, it's not worth doing.
Yeah.
And of course we need assessment. So you often get people shuffling in their seats and thinking, I don't want any assessment. Of course there should be assessment, of course there needs to be that, but I believe that children need to be given autonomy. That if I was to ask you, and this is why I love Chatty Bumpkin, has to say that, because we need our imagination. It's what makes us human beings. Our ideas count, and you will have different ideas to me, and we all have different ideas. Now the trouble is is that particularly in writing and creativity, it's become standardized, and when you standardize something, it becomes standard. Right. And so it's almost like I see it very often where children are very switched off of writing. I despair. Writing is the most magical, wonderful thing in order to communicate, express ourselves. It's something that we need to be more than ever now, to be able to express with measured and with clarity and all this. And the trouble is they're being taught, there's a big focus on rules like grammar and spelling, rules. But there's no space to play with the rules. Again, Chatty Bumpkin this is why I got involved, is it's playful, it's joyous, it's structured yet free. It's these this is what I'm trying. So this is why I'm involved in Chatty Bumpkin as well, is because that's my philosophy, is that, you know, what I do is very structured. It might look, you know, but it's very structured. I know exactly where I'm going, but the children, I allow them to express themselves. Their ideas count. Where we starts with their ideas.
Right.
That's why it's called Right Inspired, because I aim to give them experiences that are so inspirational and so unforgettable that they can't help but express them. And so it's not only through writing, I do it through song, through movement, through anything, so they can express themselves. So then they feel validated, because if I say to you, I want you to write a sentence with a fronted adverbial. I kid you not, this is what they count, things like fronted adverbial.
Say that again. I write a sentence.
Okay, so certain
I'm
rules.
already lost. I'm like,
yeah,
no.
So in other words, there are rules in writing, okay? Full stops, capital letters. So,
Yeah.
And grammar rules, fronted adverbials, all this sort of stuff. And that's fine. But if I teach you the rule and it just becomes the purpose of the writing is the rule.
Right.
In other words, you have to write front, carefully, I opened the door.
Yeah.
But you might want to write, I opened the door.
Yeah.
And that's as valid as going carefully, I opened the door. I actually think a lot of fronted adverbials and things like that can be a little clumsy, actually. Right. So now it's all so formulaic and mechanized that I think we're losing engagement. We're at risk of losing engagement. We're losing the purpose of writing.
If I was a child in those, so I have 2 teenage stepdaughters, and things that they're learning. So one's just done GCSEs, others just finished year 9. They're both very intelligent, but they're also, the things that they're learning. I'm a creative, so although I kind of have like a officey role within Chatty Bumpkin, my background is as a performer. So I didn't go to traditional like further education. I went to dance college. I studied music theatre. I am an actress, presenter, dancer, performer. I think in pictures. I find it really hard, actually. I can talk. I'm quite a good talker, but I'm not bad at writing. But if you ask me to write, with my grammar is not good, because I write how I speak. My maths is not great. And even what they're learning, my brain can't, doesn't, not even that it can't learn it, it probably could learn it, it actually doesn't want to learn it. That's not, you would have to whip the creative out of me. Whereas I just want to think in pictures and colors, and just like, I'm like a total dreamer, like a daydreamer. And so everything you're talking about, like with the standardized, you know, the rules, actually makes me feel physically panicked.
Yes, and that's the trouble. And that's the other issue that I am very passionate is I'm not passionate about anxiety, but I see it. And you see children, and I you know, it's a long road, and I've been sticking my head above the parapet for many years, but children at school should be a joyous place, and people always, oh no, they're really happy. They are, and many schools are brilliant. I visit many of them. I'm very pro teacher. I think teachers have been distrusted, and the pressure they're put on is just ludicrous. And I speak to many teachers, and they're, you know, just the other day I was working with some year 4s, and she just stood and said, look at them, because they've made little models, and so and they were writing about their models, and they were passionate about their models because they were their models, and it had an environmental thing, little model trees. So we made a forest, and because all the trees are different, and I don't just tell them to make a tree. There's sounds, and you know, they're in this whole space, and they're absolutely silent, and they're focused. And she said, look, there's no competition. They're all doing what they want to do. They're all expressing in their way. They're not worried about what that person's doing. That, and then they perform, and the non-writers write, and they get up and improvise with song. Sometimes the children who never speak, children's teachers sometimes cry because they're so taken aback. Now, what produces that is because if you give a child autonomy and agency, remarkable things happen. And that a school should be a platform for agency and autonomy, not for you're all doing it that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're wrong. You're saying the trouble is at 6 years old, children, and you were just saying then, I can't do this, I can do this, I can't. This is what this is wrong. You shouldn't be at any age. It's called a thing called growth mindset.
Yeah.
So that and that doesn't mean there's no, of course there are things. I couldn't be a brain surgeon. I
No.
don't want to be a brain surgeon. This is
Yeah.
the argument they always say, what about the brain surgeons? Fine. I'm sure that if you want to be a brain, you'll be a brain surgeon. There's a different mindset. But the fact is, we're all different things. And at the age of 6, 26, 36, 46, you never know what you're capable of. The human mind, the human being is an incredible thing. And these little children go, I can't write at 6.
Yeah.
And I go, well, you probably can't because you're 6.
Yeah.
That's all right. I can't write all the time. No one can. Anyway, I always say to children, anyone who says they never make mistakes is a liar.
Mm-hmm.
Mistakes are good, and we should celebrate mistakes. And I just fear that there's this perfection. I worked on a project called, it's part of a thing called The Death of Little Miss Perfect, particularly among girls wanting perfection in girls' schools, and the anxiety that produces. Because and it's about saying that it's okay to say, what do you think?
Yeah.
Rather than what do you think she thinks?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, well, you're meant to think? No, what do you think?
Yeah.
And what do you think? So if I give some sort of sonic thing, now this go back to Chatty with that very young age, which is, see, young children do that, don't they? They can say, oh, I want to talk about a fish.
Yeah.
And
My
I go,
mum's
great,
favorite
talk
is
about a fish.
purple.
Yeah.
Just
And
they'll
I've
just
taught,
whatever they're thinking, they'll say.
yes. And that is joyous, you see. And then, so we can learn a lot by how young children learn.
Yeah.
And it's not saying that we sort of dumb down education, but it's that spirit of, as I keep saying, autonomy, agency, and inspiration and energy. We don't want to see children. I've spoken to Ofsted about this. Do you want to see children in their class like that? Is that what you want? Or to be like,
And if you like that as well, you're not learning, are you?
no, of
Like
course not.
shoulders forwards, chest
Yeah,
down.
yeah,
You're completely you're disengaged. You're not in a peak state of like
yeah,
learning.
that's
You're
it.
not energized. Your brain's not.
No,
You're just wishing it to be over.
exactly.
We've
And
all
I
been there.
think so. We just need much more. We need more creativity in schools. And that doesn't mean we don't need rule. We do. We need grammar. That's fine. And teachers always ask, so how can I make grammar creative? And I go, you can't. Don't waste your time.
It's a rule.
It's not creative.
Yeah.
Just teach it. If I want to teach you, I'm a musician. If I wanted to teach you G on a ukulele, I'm not going to do it through contemporary dance.
G is
I'm not going
G.
to do it through mine. I'm just going to tell you. It's not that interesting.
This is G.
This is G. And then you practice. Fine.
Yeah.
That's not that interesting. But you need a chance to play, to experiment, to make mistakes, to try something else, to do it your way. You need that space.
Surely if we don't let children do that, we're at the risk of, all these. I mean, I feel like with AI and stuff, we're moving into a dangerous world anyway without activity, but we won't come onto that just yet. But like, surely if we're not letting children do that at an early age, so they're not, because I think I'm probably one of the last generation. So I'm in my 30s, so born late 80s, so pre-phone. Had a phone at the end of my teenage years, so I kind of the last generation to really experience childhood without phones.
Almost.
So internet started when I was in year 6, but you didn't have it. You had it at school in the headmaster's office that someone could book to use, but you didn't get it really until I was in year 11. It wasn't really mainstream.
No.
But let's use Beethoven as an example, or amazing works of art, or theatre, or shows, or anything. Surely if we continue to ask children to colour in the lines, as it was, if that's a good example, and not express themselves, then eventually in another decade or another generation's time, we're going to be in this. And I think already we're in this worrying space where we've got so much technology, there's so much less interaction, there's less creativity, there's less personal thing. I worry that what you're talking about, like in another decade or so's time, we're not going to have like the next.
I think it's almost happening now. I think there's children sort of, when I work with them and you do all this stuff, they, one time it was year 2, and I do a lot of rhythm stuff, and I'm really into beat competency and the rhythm of language, and how language is rhythmical and playful and joyous. and malleable. You can change it, you can play, and do ridiculous sentences, make up. So that they love language, because you've got to love language. You want to write, not saying, well, this is language. It's a lovely thing, and it's changing. And so I got them out. I just say, look, in order to write, we've got to be energized. We've got to top up the batteries. We've got to be smiling. We've got to be, we can't all be crying. If we're all stressed, and they understand this, even at year 2, even little tiny. And they just stand up. I play a beat, they bounce up and down, they do all this, and they do call and repeat, which is all about focus. And because a lot of teachers say they can't focus, I get they're totally focused when they're doing that.
Well, they can't focus when you're asking them to do grammar.
Yeah, exactly. Or they find it hard to focus. So
it's hard.
I really agree in muscle memory as well. So focus, concentration, awareness, all this, noticing things, all this stuff. I'll get back to the other point. I'm just going on a little tangent here, but it's something you have to experience. It's an experiential thing. So if a child's there going like that, just going focus, you need to concentrate. All they'll hear is they don't know what they're talking about. So you show them, you say, right, give them something that they can't help but focus on. They focus and they lose a sense of time. They're totally focused. They can't, they say, that's called focus. What you have just been doing, that's what focus is. If you get it, and they go, not quite, let's do something else to focus. Call and repeat, all this, this is the story in Chatty, Bumpkin, and all these sort of things. It's about focus, and it seems like play, but there's a real purpose to this, because you're giving them something, they're following the moves, whatever it might be. And I completely forgot what I was going on about. Oh yes, there's year 2, and he stood up, and so I'd stand up and just bounce up and down, and he said to me, "This is the best day of my life."
Oh my God.
And it's because it's just so exciting. This is the best. I'm not saying they do anything. Of course, they do exciting things, but it just shows how open they are to something a bit different. So the other thing about it is that if it's always the same, because I visit a lot of schools, and obviously you have systems and stuff. I'm not, I was in a school, I'm a teacher and stuff, but I think there's loads of teachers, and I meet them all the time, who are desperate to be themselves. They have their own way of teaching. I want to try this, and they're just not allowed to. And if I was a head teacher, I'd be like, not do what you want. This is what the old alarm bells go off, and people go, oh, you can't let them do what they go. Well, they are professionals. Let's have a good idea. How are we ever going to grow? How are we ever going to move forward? If a young teacher comes and goes, I want to try this new way of approaching whatever it is, grammar, whatever it might be, spelling, story writing, approach to creative idea generation, whatever it might be, I'll be like, go for it. And I'm here to help, don't show me. And if it all goes wrong, let's work on it. And I like that bit, wasn't sure of that. Give them a chance to say, well, I'm sure of that. Okay. But no, it's not like no, because you've got to follow the plan. You've got to follow the scheme. Follow,
And then there's so many teachers leaving as well, isn't there?
And I wonder why. Because it worries me,
Under immense amounts of pressure, ticking lots of boxes, loads of paperwork that's not even necessary for the kids, just to show that, like, you've got to prove your work all the time. And if not,
distrust.
A
lot of distrust.
And then from like some conversations that I've had with various teachers over the last few years, of like, that's then bred into the senior management, and people are then being reported, and that distrust, and also so I have quite a few friends in teaching. Actually, performers often end up in teaching, which I guess you're a musician. It's a performance. And I have a couple of friends, one who used to be in sound in the West End, and another girl who I used to work with when I used to work many years ago. We worked abroad as entertainers. We're kind of like Butler and Redcoats, but in Spain. And she is so much fun. She was a singer, dancer, and the best host. She's hilarious, and she ended up as a primary school teacher. And I just can imagine her classes are the best. And then the girl Kirsty, who was in sound, and she's a musician, she teaches at primary school, and she teaches maths, but she teaches it with rap. Which I
Yeah,
think is great. Like,
yeah,
she's doing it creatively, and so bringing that creative element
mm,
in, and then super popular, and
mm,
people are learning, and her year sixes are getting really great. Then they're getting really great grades, but they're also
mm.
learning it through a creative
Yeah, that's
way.
right. I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, I think schools are amazing places. As I say, I meet thousands of teachers. That's the thing. When I'm a very teacher person, my insects are very teacher friendly, and teachers like it because I'm still teaching
Yeah,
today, and they want to. I have hundreds of testimonials, and the general thing is this is what teachers should. Yeah, this is what we want
yeah,
to do. And so why aren't, and obviously many schools, yeah, they're given that freedom, but it's particularly there's, some schools, because they're under the pressure,
yeah.
it's not their fault, they're under the pressure to
Where's
get
this pressure coming from as well? It's
an
obviously coming from Ofsted, and then who's deciding that? Like,
government policy, isn't it? So it's the
yeah, which
government.
of people that are not sat in a school watching
This is the
children
trouble. The curriculum's it's too much of it, but it's too narrow. So there's a lot of stuff in a very
in a small box, and also
small box.
going back to that Beethoven thing as well. Like, in my experience, the best people, the people that have wild success, or they are an amazing entrepreneur, like someone like Sam who created Tatty Bumpkin, that is, she would be the definition otherwise of a square peg in a round hole.
Mm,
Like, you're trying to jam somebody in there that ultimately,
yeah,
we're so much more than just maths, English, science,
yeah.
or whatever. And yeah, so
There's so much potential in
so
schools.
much
That's the
potential.
point
So
with the children. Yeah.
obviously we've sort of talked about kind of what you do, and things like that. You're just one person. I'm sure there's
Mm,
more similar people out there, but
yeah.
what kind of is the solution, do you think? Or if it can't be sort of done, because it can feel a bit like, oh my gosh, what are we going to
Yeah,
do?
yeah.
A bit like, when you talk about sort of I don't know, the planet, and it can feel a bit overwhelming of like, I'm
Yeah,
just one
yeah.
person. What can people do at home, or what can we do to help children, if there's any parents listening, or any teachers or anything like
Yeah. I
that?
think embrace creativity. Really talk, move them away from these as
Yeah.
much as you can. That I've got one, but we need to be aware, pay attention, notice. I do a whole series of things with children about paying attention, noticing things. And there's this lovely story. I was working with year eights about the power of this. Because if we're always looking at this, firstly, this is virtual, it's not real. So a real flower is better than a picture of a flower. There's
100%.
beauty in the world. If you just open your eyes, you notice it.
And children are such a good teacher of presence as well. If you
Yeah,
have
yeah. And
children
be
that
in the
are
present. Yeah.
under 7, like, if I take my niece, or my nephew, or when my stepchildren were smaller, and I was actually not great at this, because I was like, I'm an adult and I've got somewhere to go and I want to be at that place.
Mm.
But my other half would always be like, we went to North Devon one time, which is actually where I'm from, so we went there many times. But this one
Yeah,
time
yeah.
that we went to Lundy Island, and
Yeah,
I
lovely.
was like, I had a plan to go up to the top of the hill. I wanted to see, and
Mm.
actually, funnily enough, moral of this story is I didn't have a very good day. And looking back, I wished I'd experienced it differently,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Martin, he's very like, go with the flow. There's such a great opportunity. They want to stop and look at a flower, maybe for ages. Stop and
Mm.
like look at a crack in the floor,
Yeah,
sit
yeah.
down for a bit.
That's it.
And I'm sort of going, we're going up this hill because we're going to look at this museum,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
trying to take them somewhere. And actually looking back, I missed out on that day. Whereas
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we could have not even got halfway up the hill and spent the whole day just looking at this butterfly.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was very much just constantly trying to say to me, and
Yeah.
looking back now, this is going back 10 years, like, I've learned a lot, but
Mm.
actually that's such a great opportunity to have.
Yeah.
And if you're on a phone, or you're on a screen, or they're on a screen as well, then everyone's just missing that. And
Mm.
it's I don't know if that's a good story, but
Yeah. I mean, it
that's
is
one that
very
sticks with
true.
me.
But the other thing as well is reading. Reading. It's so, and I know it's really hard. I hear it all the time. With particularly with children, they don't read. But when you're working with children, the ones who read like that
But
instantly.
if
The
they don't,
ones who read a lot, because if you read a lot, you learn about story, you learn language,
yeah,
you learn about focus. I'm talking reading. fine if it's on a Kindle. I know that's a screen, it's a book, but just reading.
It's not got blue light though, has it? It's just slightly different.
No,
And if a child's not reading, I mean, parents can obviously read to them, and I know
read to
it's
them,
more
yeah,
time out of their day, but
yeah, and don't analyze the trouble. The other, and I get why you do it, because analyzing anything, we don't read to analyze, and children now, they're not reading whole books. They study bits of books. They read a book and then asked to count how many, proper nouns are in it, or how many, literally, who can spot the blah blah. Just, and you ask anyone, what is that why you read? When you're reading a book, you see, well, how many proper nouns I can spot, how many, God knows what it is. And of course, we understand those, but I just believe, and which is part of my thing, as I say, is research at King's, and I work at King's. It's exactly about this. It's about rules and ribbons.
right.
And so the ribbons is the good, the purpose of reading. And there are, of course, you need to learn rules, have to understand, but it's a very sort of delicate dance between these. And I just think it's because it's measurable. We're so obsessed, so that it's what is measurable. It's easy to measure a rule. Do you know it? Yes, no, boom, 2 points. But how do you feel about that book? How do you feel about that book? How did it move you? Hard to measure that. So
and also,
we've got a data run system. It's all about data, which feeds into it's a state data bank. You want me
which
to get on?
isn't very human either, is it? We are feeling-based machines. We are, human beings, like something having an experience. We are a feeling-based machine. We actually are not a fact data. We're not a computer. We are hormones and emotions and feelings and vision, and even down to if someone ever says, well, I just, if someone's listening thinking, well, when I read it, I can't read a book. So if I read a book, I don't know about you, I presume you're probably the same, I could turn 10, 15, 20 pages. If I sit on a plane for a long time, I could read a whole book, not remember turning a page. And for me, I just see in pictures, and the words just go in. And funnily enough, if someone then said to me, tell me a noun, or tell me where that was, or tell me where, I wouldn't have a clue. And that starts to make me feel like, oh, even as an adult, it starts to make me feel I'm not very intelligent, but I could read that whole book and I would absolutely devour it. But I've totally lost my train of thought, Phil.
But fundamentally, though, you're saying the purpose of you read, and you don't analyze, and that's and I think we're in the golden age of books now. I mean, the amount of wonderful children's books. I mean, there's brilliant, so many, and it's so sad, and there is a real dilemma, because sadly a lot of parents don't read. Sadly, a lot of teachers don't read.
Oh, really?
I don't, for whatever reason. I mean, a lot of them.
I think Netflix and things like that is it's like instant entertainment.
Much easier,
like 20 years of writing for Game of Thrones, and you can watch it in 6 months. And you've just got everything back to back on Netflix. But so something that I love about reading is, particularly, don't get me wrong, I love me some Netflix. But I read every day, and I really like it because I find that it's not passive. So when I'm sat watching Netflix, it's passive entertainment. Whereas when
great, that has its place.
Yeah, and I really like it. And I've got a busy life, and I like to have a quiet, like a chilled out mind for a bit. But when I read, I feel actually more restored than I do passively consuming content.
Reading is good for your mental health. It's good for you.
Can imagine.
And so it's all this stuff, and so read as much as they can with children, particularly young children. Read to them as well. And I get the whole busy thing, but just more of that kind of the playfulness of language. Talk to them as much as you can. So they're full of words, and don't put too much pressure on the testing side of things, because they do get really anxious, and that'll just, if anxiety,
and that's not doesn't serve you anyway, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's just a totally.
So just kind of before we finish, because I know that your background, so Phil's background actually is as a musician, and that's kind of how you ended up at Chatty Bumpkin, and you sort of say you use rhythm and music in classrooms. Again, is there anything that parents can do at home? So obviously we've said either read with your kids or encourage your kids to read, and for those children that are not reading, read with them, and kind of you know, help them develop that
Talk
like
about the joy of it, you
imagination.
know, really
Yeah.
sell it to them. Be the salesperson, sell the purpose of reading, you know, don't worry, that kind of
And
thing.
as someone that works in sales, just everybody, you have to be sold to be able to sell.
Yeah,
So you got to
yeah.
ultimately, and then so anything music wise that they can do at home,
I
or
think,
you think
yeah,
really would help with mental health or learning or imagination or anything that you could
well,
share.
obviously playing an instrument's great, but I mean, fundamentally, beat is really good. So any sort of with younger children, any sort of rhythmic games, which are kind of hardwired into
A
most
pan and a
nursery
spoon,
rhymes.
maybe.
So yeah, pan and spoons,
Pan and a
clapping, you
spoon.
know, movement, a lot of those sort of moving to a beat, marching, all those kind of stuff. But then, you know, I think the ukulele is a great instrument to start.
What is the ukulele?
It's a little, I haven't got one here.
Oh, it's a little guitar.
Well, it's not a little guitar, it's a ukulele, but it's like a little guitar. It looks a
Sorry,
bit,
was that like
no, no,
it looks like a little guitar.
looks like a little
Right.
guitar, but it isn't. And you've got
Yeah.
like the whole family of them. It's very, I love ukulele. I've got all
Okay.
the you have the oh god, blimey, the tenor ukulele, which is quite big. You get the
Right.
soprano ukulele, which is a tiny one. So that's usually the soprano is in
Yeah.
schools, and the tenor's a bit bigger. Then you get the baritone, which is a bit bigger still, and then you have the bass or the U bass, as it's called. So you've got
Right.
four, but they're very little, so children, and they're quite simple. The fingering, you can learn a lot of chords with just one finger.
Oh,
So, you know, just put the finger on
interesting.
um, you know, schools often do it, but I think compared to the recorder, which because a lot of children learn the
Oh,
recorder, I find that a bit
yeah.
painful. Little
Remember the
ukulele,
three
they're very
blind
nice
mice.
things. They're very like wooden and you know very tactile.
Doesn't make you want to rip your ears off.
No, that's right. And so I'd always, you know, just have fun, but encourage the learning of an instrument, but without that kind of
Pressure.
that pressure of like, have you done your scales and all that? It's just, you know, learn it and then become proficient. And but a lot of children love that, and that's great for that focus and you know just taking on a challenge. But certainly listening to lots of music as well, just listening and enjoying it, and moving to the music, all that kind of stuff can really help. You know, because there's language in music, there's you know sort of
Yeah.
words and all that sort of stuff. But I think yeah, uh, all that kind of stuff. And if you got a little drum like this is the one I use, like a little drum
Very
like
nice.
that, that's great, and just keeping a beat. You know, everything's beat. And honestly, when I'm in schools with little ones, and I just do this, and I just go like that. I don't know if you can hear this, like that. They're all smiling straight away, and they're all like going, "That's all I'm doing. It's not that hard."
That's mad, isn't it?
And
Feel
then
like
you can just
we're
do
drawn
little.
back to our like, sitting around a campfire when we were living
That's
in
it.
primal
And
times.
just calling and repeats nonsense is great. I mean, it's difficult for parents because I can be quite ridiculous, and children just think, "Well, that's great." Oh, if the parent suddenly starts, but you know, making this is with little children, they love it. And I remember I learned this off a reception class because I do these kind of like a beat like this, and I kind of say something. I might go, no, no, and then they do it back, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was trying to say something, I can't remember, and it came out wrong. I sort of went, I can't, where are we? I can't remember what I was saying, and it sort of came out all a bit wobbly. And one of the little children went, "Oh, what language is that?" You know, and I said, "Oh, I don't know. It's gibberish." I said, "Well, okay, let's do some gibberish." And then you just make
That's so
so they go,
funny.
"Ooh, like, like that," and they'll repeat it perfectly. And
Brilliant.
this is an often in a school where, say, it's a class and they're really buzzy. And
Yeah.
the teacher goes, "Oh, you know, God, you know, good luck."
Yeah.
Do that, that every single one of them, and
Yeah.
put. So I say to them, and this is the other sort of fundamental. Learning's a choice.
Right.
It's a choice. It's not. So if you don't want to listen or you don't want to learn, there's nothing you can do. You can't me going listen or
Yeah.
punishing you. So when those the little flighty ones, and I go and they do it straight back.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, you can focus. You've just proved it to me. So
Yeah.
there
It's
we
just
are. I'm
about
not going to
finding
believe." Yeah.
what
So they
gets.
prove to themselves. So it's any time with your own, and it's just proving to them, because a lot of them have this narrative that I can't do that. That's not me. I don't do maths. I don't do spelling. And you go, well, you do. You just find it difficult. That's okay. So the more of that, because in the school structure, and this isn't coming from teachers, it really isn't. I strongly believe that. It's the child's perception, and you have to be really explicit. I believe in schools, explicit about it's okay to make, not just have a sign on the wall going, it's okay to make mistakes. You see a lot of signs on walls, growth mindset, reach for the stars. Means nothing. You've got to live it. You've got to say it and believe it and be it yourself as the teacher. That's what I believe. That's what I think. Is be like that, and then children will pick it up, and then they'll believe it, and then that's the change I'd like to see.
This has been so great, Phil. I feel like that's probably in the podcast I've spoken least in, because I just find you so interesting. So
thank you very much.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. So thank you so much. If anyone needs to find you, they can find you at rightinspired.co.uk.
That's right.
And I'm sure we'll have you back if you'll.
Oh, good. Yeah.
If you'd like to come back, because that was just so interesting. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And hopefully we will see you again soon.
Okay. Thank you.